22 years. That is how long Charles Darwin sat on the most dangerous idea in human history. He had the proof. He had the mechanism. He had mountains of evidence stacked in notebooks and sketches and specimen jars at his country house in Kent. But he did not publish. The man who would rewrite humanity's origin story kept it locked in a drawer. Why? What terror grips a mind so tightly that it chooses silence over truth? What calculation runs through a man's head when he knows his words will shatter every assumption about life itself? We are told Darwin feared the church. We are told he worried about his wife. We are told he needed more data. All true. But the real story is darker and stranger. The mental process that carried Darwin from the Galapagos Islands in 1835 to publication on November the 24th, 1859, is not a story of scientific patience. It is a story of psychological warfare with his own conscience, panic attacks that left him vomiting for days, a dead daughter who broke what was left of his faith, and a letter from Indonesia that arrived like a guillotine. This is what it actually took to publish Origin. And once you see how Darwin's mind worked through those 2 decades, you will never think about conviction the same way. Also comment from which city you are hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from the Darwin Correspondence Project at Cambridge University, published in their ongoing series since 1985, and the Darwin Manuscripts Project at the American Museum of Natural History, digitized in 2014 with annotations from Cambridge University Library holdings. These are not secondary sources. These are Darwin's own notebooks, letters written in his hand, medical diaries, where he tracked his vomiting episodes by the hour. Now back to the information. Darwin is 22 years old, boarding HMS Beagle in Plymouth. He is hired as the ship's naturalist, not because of his credentials. He has none. He is hired because Captain Robert Fitzroy wants a gentleman companion of similar social standing for conversation during a 5-year voyage. Darwin almost does not go. His father calls it a waste of time, but his uncle Josiah Wedgwood intervenes. Darwin boards, the Beagle sails. In those years, Darwin collects nearly 500 birdskins, fossils of gigantic extinct mammals, plant specimens, geological samples. He fills notebook after notebook. In the Galapagos Islands, September through October 1835, Darwin spends 5 weeks. He collects finches, 13 species. He does not realize they are all related. He labels them as wrens, gross beaks, different families entirely. It is the mockingbirds that catch his attention. He notices the mockingbirds differ island to island. He tags his specimens by location. The finches, he does not tag properly. This mistake will haunt him because when ornithologist John Gould examines the collection in 1837, Gould tells Darwin the finches are all closely related species, different islands, different beaks, same origin. That realization is the crack that splits everything open. Below those words, he sketches a tree, branches splitting. Some lines reach the top, others end, extinct. It is crude but unmistakable. He understands all life is related, descent with modification, common ancestry. He has the pattern. He does not have the mechanism. September 28th, 1838. 15 months after opening notebook B, Darwin is reading for amusement. That is the word he uses later. Amusement. He picks up Thomas Malthus' essay on the principle of population, published 1798. Malthus argues human population grows exponentially. Food supply grows linearly. Result is competition, starvation, disease. Darwin reads one passage and the mechanism snaps into place. If organisms overproduce offspring and resources are limited, then there is struggle. Favorable variations survive. Unfavorable ones die. Accumulate those differences over generations and you get new species. Natural selection. Darwin writes in notebook D that same month. He uses the metaphor of wedges, 100,000 wedges forcing adapted structures into gaps in nature, thrusting out weaker ones. He has it. Pattern and mechanism, evolutionary tree and natural selection. He is 29 years old. The theory is complete in his mind. He calls it a sketch. It is the first time he writes out the theory in sustained prose. He includes natural selection. He uses that term for the first time as a section heading, pages 5 and 6 of the sketch. He writes fast, scribbles, crosses outlines, revises. The sketch is rough, but it covers the structure of what will become Origin. He finishes it. He does not publish it. He shows it to Joseph Dalton Hooker. Hooker reads it in 1847. Darwin writes a letter to Emma, his wife. He tells her if he dies suddenly, she should publish the essay. He sets aside £500 for publication. He even names potential editors. Hooker, Charles Lyell. This is a man preparing for death to release his idea because he cannot do it himself. The essay sits, unpublished. By May 1838, he writes of an antagonism between his noddle and stomach. Mental exertion triggers physical distress, headaches, vomiting. 2 to 3 hours after meals, abdominal pain, flatulence, fatigue. These are not minor complaints. Over 40 years, Darwin suffers combinations of malaise, vertigo, dizziness, muscle spasms, vomiting, cramps, bloating, nocturnal intestinal gas, alterations of vision, severe tiredness, nervous exhaustion, skin problems, blisters on scalp, eczema, crying, anxiety, sensation of impending death, loss of consciousness, fainting, tachycardia, insomnia, tinnitus, depression. Medical historians Thomas Barloon and Russell Noyes publish analysis in the Journal of the American Medical Association in 1997. They diagnose panic disorder. Episodes initiate abruptly, waxing and waning pattern. Emotional triggers feature prominently excitement, worry. Mental exertion. Darwin explicitly links vomiting spells to overwork or excitement of the brain in letters from the 1840s onward. Publication pressures precipitate incapacitation lasting days. In 1849, after 4 months of incessant vomiting, Darwin tries water therapy at Dr. James Gully's establishment in Malvern. Cold water cure. Patients wake at 5 a.m., wrapped in wet sheets, buckets of cold water poured over them, 5-mile walks, drinking well water. It provides some relief, not a cure. Darwin keeps detailed health diaries. He tracks attacks, duration, intensity, triggers. A third of his working life is spent doubled up, trembling, vomiting, dousing himself in icy water. This is the physical state in which he is supposed to publish a theory that will be attacked by every religious authority in Britain. Not because of the theory follows from the loss. By 1838, while formulating natural selection, Darwin is already doubting. But the final blow comes April 23, 1851. His daughter Annie dies. Second child, first daughter. Darwin admits she is his favorite. Buoyant joyousness, sensitiveness, strong affection. In October 1850, Annie falls ill. Fever, general unwellness. She worsens. March 1851, Darwin takes her to Malvern. To Dr. Gully, hydrotherapy treatment. Annie is 10 years old. Emma stays home. She is heavily pregnant with their 9th child, Horace. Darwin stays with Annie, writes letters to Emma daily. By mid-April, Annie is weak, exhaustion, stomach distress, difficulty speaking. April the 23rd, 1851, midday. Annie dies in Darwin's arms, her last words offering water. "I quite thank you." Dr. Gully describes the cause as bilious fever of typhoid character. Modern analysis suggests scarlet fever followed by abdominal tuberculosis. Darwin is overwhelmed by grief. He does not attend the funeral. He returns to Down House. Emma gives birth to Horace May 13th, 3 weeks after Annie dies. Darwin writes a memorial April 30th. He describes Annie's characteristics. The impressions now put down will recall more vividly her character. Annie is buried in Great Malvern Priory churchyard. Darwin and Emma never speak of her again. The Darwin Correspondence Project published analysis in 2012 argues Darwin's faith was already gone, but Annie's death seals it. How can a good God allow a 10-year-old girl to die in agony from fever? Natural selection provides an answer without God. Random variation, struggle. Survival of traits. No design, no purpose, just mechanism. Darwin now has personal and intellectual reasons to reject divine creation. But publishing that rejection means telling the world his daughter died for nothing. No heavenly reunion, no divine plan, just chance and death. Meanwhile, Darwin works. Barnacles, 8 years on barnacles. 1846 to 1854, 4-volume study, living and fossil cirripedes. Why barnacles? Because if he is going to overturn biology, he needs credentials. He needs to prove he can do meticulous taxonomy, describe species, understand variation. The barnacle work is Darwin establishing authority. It also delays the species question, respectably. Joseph Hooker writes in 1854 that Darwin has earned recognition, Royal Medal from Royal Society in 1853, for geology and natural history, particularly cirripede work. Now Darwin has standing. He can return to the species theory. He joins pigeon fancy clubs, learns from breeders, variation under domestication. If humans can produce extreme variation by selection, then nature can do it too, given time, deep time. He collects data, corresponds with botanists, breeders, naturalists worldwide. He is building an overwhelming case. Fact by fact, observation by observation. By late 1856 into 1857, his notes are voluminous. He has frameworks. He has chapters outlined. He is methodical, but he is also slow, perfectionist. Every claim needs support. Every objection needs answering. The book expands. December the 22nd, 1857. Darwin writes a letter to Alfred Russel Wallace. Wallace is a naturalist in the Malay archipelago. They have corresponded before. Wallace published a paper in 1855. on the law which has regulated the introduction of new species. Darwin writes encouragingly, says they think alike, similar conclusions. Darwin adds, I believe I go much further than you. That line is critical. Darwin knows Wallace is close to the same idea, but Darwin believes his version is more developed. He is confident he should not be. February 1858. Wallace is on Ternate, an island in Indonesia, actually on nearby Gilolo Island, modern Halmahera. Wallace is sick with fever, lying in bed. He thinks about Malthus, same essay Darwin read. Wallace has the same insight, struggle for existence. Favorable variations preserved, unfavorable destroyed, natural selection. Wallace writes an essay on the tendency of varieties to depart indefinitely from the original type. Approximately 20 manuscript pages. He finishes it, addresses it to Darwin, includes a cover letter. Asks Darwin to review it. If Darwin thinks it worthwhile, pass it to Charles Lyell. Wallace posts the letter, probably in March 1858. Some historians argue April. The letter travels by steamship, Ternate to Surabaya, Surabaya to Singapore, Singapore to London. Mail routes in 1858 take weeks. Darwin writes to Lyell same day, your words have come true with a vengeance, forestalled. If Wallace had my manuscript sketch written out in 1842, he could not have made a better short abstract. Darwin is facing his worst fear, 20 years of work, someone else publishes first. He will be seen as derivative. Or worse, a thief who read Wallace's earlier papers and stole ideas. Darwin says he would rather burn his whole book than Wallace, or anyone should think he behaved in a paltry spirit. This is not false modesty. Darwin genuinely struggles. He has priority. He has the 1842 sketch. He has the 1844 essay. He has letters to Asa Gray in 1857 describing natural selection, but none are published. Wallace's paper is ready. Darwin is in agony, mentally and physically. Late June 1858, he is suffering terrible nausea. His infant son, Charles Waring, is ill, scarlet fever. The household is in crisis. Darwin is too ill and grief-stricken to think about publications. Lyell and Hooker take control. Darwin's letter to Asa Gray from September 5th, 1857. Wallace's essay. All to be read at the next meeting, establishing that both men arrived at the theory independently, giving Darwin priority by dates, but acknowledging Wallace's originality. July 1st, 1858. The papers are read at the Linnean Society meeting. Neither Darwin nor Wallace is present. Darwin is at home grieving. Wallace is still in Indonesia. About 30 members attend. There is no reaction, no debate, no recognition that the foundation of biology just shifted. The papers are published August 20th, 1858 in the Journal of Proceedings of the Linnean Society. Volume 3, page 45 to 62. Title is On the Tendency of Species to Form Varieties and on the Perpetuation of Varieties in Species by Natural Means of Selection. Darwin and Wallace as co-discoverers. Still, almost nobody notices. If Darwin wants credit for the theory he developed over 20 years, he needs to publish the full version. Now, the delay is over. External pressure has done what internal conviction could not. Darwin stops working on natural selection, the big book. He starts writing an abstract, shorter, faster. Publishable. It will have to be published separately. He keeps writing. By mid-March 1859, the abstract has reached the stage where Darwin is thinking of early publication. The abstract becomes a book. He titles it On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or the Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life. Publisher, John Murray. Darwin negotiates. Murray agrees to publish. His health is terrible. He suffers repeated bouts of nausea. He works through them, revises, adds, cuts. The book grows. By November 1859, it is ready. 490 pages in the first edition, divided into 14 chapters. Introduction, variation under domestication. Variation under nature, struggle for existence. Natural selection, laws of variation, difficulties on theory. Instinct, hybridism, geological record, geographical distribution, mutual affinities of organic beings, recapitulation, and conclusion. Darwin deliberately avoids discussing human origins in detail. He writes one line, light will be thrown on the origin of man and his history. That is it. One line. He is avoiding the controversy, for now. He will address human evolution later in Descent of Man, published 1871. November 22nd, 1859. The book is sold to the trade. 1,250 copies printed. Price, 15 shillings. Darwin is at Ilkley Wells House in Yorkshire, a spa, suffering terrible nausea. He is secreted away when the book goes on sale. He sends copies to experts with self-effacing letters. How you will long to crucify me alive. He fears the worst. He calls it living in hell. November 24th, 1859. Official publication date? All copies are taken immediately at Murray's autumn sale. The book sells out first day. Darwin has no idea yet. He is isolated, sick, terrified. But radical dissenters are sympathetic. Rising London biologists and geologists are interested. Even if few adopt Darwin's approach immediately, Thomas Henry Huxley becomes Darwin's bulldog, defends the theory in public debates. June 30th, 1860. Huxley debates Bishop Samuel Wilberforce at Oxford. The Great Debate, Evolution versus Creation. Huxley wins rhetorically. The theory gains ground. He works through correspondence, answers letters, collects more data, prepares second edition. By 1861, Origin is in its third edition. Darwin revises constantly, adds material, clarifies arguments, responds to critics. He will produce 6 editions total. The last in 1872. Each edition expands. By the 6th edition, it is over 440 pages, but the core argument never changes. Descent with modification, natural selection, common ancestry, slow, gradual change over immense time. Physically, he never recovers. The 1850s and 60s are decades of illness, vomiting, weakness, retreat. He becomes increasingly reclusive, works from home, maintains strict routine, sandwalk at downhouse, greenhouse experiments, limited visitors, controlled environment. His panic attacks ease only in late life when the pressure to publish is gone. Psychologically, the cost is faith. Annie's death and the theory together destroy any remnant of Christianity. Darwin describes himself as agnostic, not atheist. He does not claim to know. But he does not believe in the God of his youth, the benevolent creator, the designer. Natural selection is mechanism without purpose, suffering without meaning. Emma remains Christian. They navigate this divide privately. Darwin attends church for social reasons occasionally, but he has no faith. Socially, the cost is reputation. Darwin becomes one of the most controversial figures in Victorian Britain, praised by some, reviled by others, caricatured as ape-man in newspapers, accused of blasphemy, materialism, destroying morality. He endures this quietly, does not engage public debates. Lets Huxley and others fight. But it weighs on him. Letters show sensitivity to criticism, anxiety about reception, fear of being wrong. Even after Origin is accepted by the scientific community, Darwin worries. His 1865 letters mention 5 months unable to do anything but be sick. 1865 to William Hooker. For 5 months I have done nothing but be sick. But Darwin had the evidence in 1839. He had the case in 1842. He did not publish for 20 years, not because he lacked proof, because the cost of speaking was unbearable. Physical collapse, loss of faith, dead children, social ostracism. Wallace's letter forces Darwin's hand. Without that external pressure, would Origin ever have been published? Possibly not in Darwin's lifetime. The 1844 essay would have been found after his death, published posthumously, as he planned. Someone else would have developed natural selection independently. Maybe Wallace, maybe another naturalist. The truth would emerge, but Darwin's reputation would be different. He would be seen as the man who had it first, but lacked courage to publish. Instead, he is seen as the man who endured 2 decades of private hell to finally release the most important biological idea in history. A letter from Indonesia, a dead infant son, friends who intervened, a publisher who agreed, declining health that made further delay pointless. Without those conditions, Darwin would have waited longer, maybe forever. That is the mental process, not courage, necessity, not conviction, compulsion. Darwin did not publish Origin because he believed in it. He believed in it from 1838. He published because by 1858, continuing to wait was more painful than the consequences of publication. Autobiography written 1876. He states, "I gained much by my delay in publishing from about 1839, when the theory was clearly conceived, to 1859. And I lost nothing by it." This is rationalization. Darwin is justifying the delay retroactively, claiming it was strategic, beneficial. He accumulated more evidence, refined arguments, built reputation. All true. But the letters from 1858 show agony, panic, fear of being forestalled. If the delay was strategic, why the terror when Wallace's letter arrived? Because the delay was not strategic, it was psychological. Darwin could not publish. Then external circumstances forced him. He did. Then he spent the rest of his life saying it was the right decision. Classic post hoc rationalization. After 1870? Why? The pressure to publish is gone. Origin is out. Descent of Man is published 1871. The Expression of Emotions in Man and Animals 1872. His major works are complete. The secret is no longer secret. The burden lifts. His attacks become less frequent. He still suffers physical ailments, but the panic dimension reduces. The anxiety about holding a dangerous idea dissipates. He has confessed. The murder, as he once called it, confessing a murder. That is how Darwin described revealing his theory in private correspondence, not confessing a discovery, confessing a murder. Telling the truth felt like admitting to killing something sacred, killing the idea of divine creation, killing human exceptionalism, killing the comfort of purpose. That is the mental weight Darwin carried for 20 years. It is only published in 1975, edited by Robert Stauffer, over 800 pages of fragments. Darwin spent years on it, then quit mid-project to write Origin. Why not finish Natural Selection and publish that? Because Natural Selection was the perfectionist project. The exhaustive treatment, every fact, every objection, every possible criticism answered. It would have taken another decade to complete. Darwin did not have a decade. Wallace had already written his paper. Darwin needed to publish fast, so he wrote the abstract. Origin is the compressed version. The essential argument, stripped of excessive detail, accessible, readable, publishable within a year. Natural Selection would have been definitive, but it would have been too late. Origin was sufficient and timely. Darwin made the right call, but only because he was forced to make it. This is the pattern. Darwin needed external force to overcome internal resistance. Malthus gave him the mechanism in 1838. But reading Malthus was not enough to publish. Gould's identification of the finches in 1837 was not enough. Barnacle work from 1846 to 1854 was not enough. Experiments with seeds and pigeons in 1854 to 1858 were not enough. Annie's death in 1851 was not enough. Emma's faith was not enough. Lyell urging him to publish was not enough. Even Darwin's own conviction that the theory was true was not enough. Only Wallace's letter in June 1858 created sufficient pressure to break the paralysis. That is the mental process, not courage, crisis, not belief, compulsion. Darwin published Origin because not publishing became impossible. Historian Roy Davies argues in 2008 that Wallace's letter and essay were sent from Ternate in March 1858, on the same steamer as a letter to Frederick Bates that arrived in England June 3, 1858. If both letters were on the same ship, they should arrive same time. Bates's letter arrived June 3rd. Darwin says he received Wallace's letter June 18th. 15-day gap. Davies suggests Darwin received Wallace's letter June 3rd, but did not acknowledge it until June 18th, giving himself time to write his own abstracts and letters, to establish priority, to consult with Lyell and Hooker. Davies implies Darwin delayed acknowledging Wallace's letter to position himself favorably before the joint presentation. Other historians dispute this. John Van Wy argues in 2012 that Wallace's letter was sent in April, not March. Different steamer, different route. Explains the delay, no conspiracy. The debate continues, but even if Davies is wrong, the accusation reveals something important. Darwin's reputation is secure enough that historians can question his integrity, and it does not diminish his achievement. The theory stands regardless of priority disputes. Natural selection is true whether Darwin published first, or Wallace, or both simultaneously. The mechanism works. The evidence accumulates. Darwin's psychology becomes historical curiosity, not scientific question. But the pattern is common. How many people know something important but do not speak? How many have evidence that contradicts accepted belief but stay silent? How many endure private knowledge that would disrupt public consensus? Darwin shows what it takes to break that silence, not just evidence. Not just conviction, but crisis, external pressure, unavoidable necessity. When staying silent becomes more painful than speaking, that is when truth emerges. He publishes steadily, smaller projects, less controversial. He avoids public life, stays at Downhouse. Emma cares for him. His children grow. Some become scientists. George Howard Darwin becomes astronomer and mathematician. Francis Darwin becomes botanist. Leonard Darwin becomes soldier then politician. Horace Darwin becomes engineer. Darwin's intellectual legacy continues through his children. April 19th, 1882. Darwin dies at Downhouse. He is 73 years old. The cause is heart failure. Decades of chronic illness finally end. He is buried in Westminster Abbey. April 26, 1882, state funeral, next to Isaac Newton, the highest honor Britain can give a scientist. The man who feared publishing his theory is laid to rest in the nation's most sacred secular space. The church honors the man who destroyed its creation story. The irony is complete. Cambridge University, Darwin Correspondence Project, has published over 30 volumes, ongoing, thousands of letters. The American Museum of Natural History hosts the Darwin Manuscripts Project. full transcripts of the transmutation notebooks, the 1842 sketch, the 1844 essay. Every page scanned, annotated, accessible. We can trace Darwin's thinking day by day, notebook entry by notebook entry. We can see the moments when ideas form, when doubts arise, when breakthroughs happen. In Notebook B, page 36, I think, the tree sketch. That is the moment. Late 1837. Darwin sees the pattern, not gradual realization, sudden clarity, then decades to confirm it. Twisted by social Darwinists into justifications for racism and eugenics. Darwin never advocated such applications. He described a mechanism. Others weaponized it. The theory itself remains, modified, expanded, integrated with genetics. Mendel's laws published 1866. Rediscovered 1900. Combined with natural selection to form modern synthesis, 1930s and 1940s. DNA structure discovered 1953. Molecular evidence for common descent. Darwin was right. More right than he knew. Not just morphology, not just fossils. Genetics confirms relatedness. Every living thing shares DNA. The code is universal. Mutations provide variation, natural selection filters, populations evolve, speciation occurs, the tree of life is real. Darwin drew it in 1837. We map it with genomes now. For Darwin, it was everything. Health, faith, children, peace of mind, 20 years of silence, then 13 years of controversy after publication. He paid to speak, but he spoke. And because he spoke, the world changed. Not immediately, not completely, but irreversibly. Biology became a science of process, not typology. Species are not fixed. They flow, change, adapt, vanish, arise. Life is not ladder. It is bush, branching, unpredictable, contingent. No goal, no purpose, just mechanism and time. That is Darwin's gift, and his curse. The truth that frees biology from mysticism but strips existence of inherent meaning. Darwin gave us the world as it is, without comfort, without lies. The mental process that produced that gift nearly destroyed the man, but the gift survived. That is what matters, not Darwin's suffering. The truth he suffered to release. Natural selection stands. Darwin's anxiety is footnote. The theory is edifice. We build on it, we test it, we refine it, but we do not overturn it, because it is true, and truth endures regardless of the psychological cost to those who speak it. The lesson for anyone sitting on dangerous knowledge. Darwin waited 20 years. The world did not end when he published. It changed, but it survived. His fears were real, but not fatal. The attacks came. He endured them. The theory spread. Opposition weakened. By his death in 1882, evolution by natural selection was orthodoxy in the scientific community. Religious objections continued, still continue. But science moved on. Truth does not require universal acceptance, only sufficient acceptance to become productive, to generate new questions. New research, new understanding. Darwin achieved that. The cost was personal, the gain was universal. That is the calculation. One man's decades of anguish purchased humanity's understanding of its own origins. Worth it? For biology, yes. For Darwin, unclear. He never said. He rationalized the delay. Claimed benefit. But his letters from 1858 show the truth. He was terrified, trapped, forced to act by circumstances beyond his control. He published not because he was ready, because he had no choice. That is the mental process, not triumph, survival, not courage, compulsion. Darwin did what he had to do, because not doing it became impossible. That is how dangerous truths enter the world, not through acts of will, through failures of restraint, when silence becomes more unbearable than speech, when suppression cracks under pressure. That is when truth emerges, bloody, painful, inevitable. Darwin bled for 20 years before the pressure broke him. And when it broke, the theory poured out. 490 pages in 13 months. Then the world had it. And Darwin had peace, not from acceptance, from release. The secret was no longer secret. The burden was shared. He could die knowing the idea survived. That is what he wanted. Not glory, survival of the theory. He got it. We have it now, built on it, extended it, confirmed it with evidence Darwin never imagined. Molecular biology, genetics, biogeography, paleontology. Every field adds data. Every data set supports descent with modification. Natural selection, common ancestry. Darwin was right. The mental process that got him to publication was torturous. But it got him there. And that is enough. The world does not remember his vomiting. It remembers his theory. That is the trade. Suffer privately, contribute publicly. Darwin made that trade, unwillingly, necessarily, irreversibly, and we are the inheritors of his suffering and his truth.